the so-called Trump's peace plan, and it was all amazing to see what has happened in Israel, what has happened in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. And here is what Netanyahu, the understanding of Netanyahu of the whole situation with the case of Gaza.
As the war is over, but clearly the war is not over. The IDF is deployed to sections of Gaza still, and Hamas is still on the streets of Gaza. How can you say the war is over?
Well, we agreed to give peace a chance. We agreed that we should. The conditions in his 20-point plan are very clear. It's not only that we get the hostages out without getting our military out, but that we would subsequently have both demilitarization and disarmament. They're not the same thing. First, Hamas has to give up its arms. And second, you want to make sure that there are no weapons factories inside Gaza. There's no smuggling of weapons into Gaza. That's demilitarization. We agreed that that's part of the plan. And we also agreed, okay, let's get the first part done. And now let's give a chance to do the second part peacefully, which is my hope. But if not, I think I heard the president speak tonight. He said, listen, they better do it, or, how can I speak for him? He said, all hell breaks loose, okay? Well, I hope it doesn't. I hope we can do this peacefully, and we're certainly ready to do so.
Actually, Trump said if they don't disarm, we're going to do it. And you know what's amazing to me, that the key point, in my opinion, is what Tom Brock said recently, that they don't have this, this word in their language, submit, how to submit. So what can they do to force them in that direction? You have to disarm them. You have to, make everything more, more directed in that aim, in that target that you're seeking for, which is the disarmament of Hamas. In order, if you're interested in peace in Gaza, you have to offer something. You have, you give something, you get something. But that's not the case here. You're taking that.
It's not. These aren't negotiations. You're absolutely right. This is about submission, and this is the Israeli policy is total submission or death. The U.S. policy is now de facto the same as the Israeli policy, and the U.S. is basically going around acting as a sort of consigliere, as they say in the mafia, for Israel, sending messages to the Lebanese, being interlocutor, basically threatening military action, sanctions, all sorts of things. In the case of Tom Barak, he directly threatened civil war in Lebanon. He said, you have to disarm Hezbollah, and we're going to provide arms to the Lebanese military to disarm Hezbollah. He's basically openly touting now for civil war. And it's kind of good that people hear this. It's good that the world sees this. It's good for the people in the Middle East who have been trying to, I don't know, they've given the United States so much leeway for all the damage it's done to the region, still thinking that, this administration or the next administration is going to be different than the last one. And of course, now we can see the whole purpose of everything the United States does in the Middle East is for Israel. It's to protect Israel, but it's also to shield Israel from any international responsibilities or accountability that it might have as a result of what it's doing, first of all, to the native Palestinian population under an apartheid system, and secondly, slaughtering Lebanese extrajudicially just for saying that there's a terror threat, leveling whole villages in South Lebanon. They've gotten away with this as well. The United States is attacking international institutions that are trying to hold Israel accountable, like the ICC, sanctioning them, the ICJ. Who knows, how that one's going to end up. And any other countries that aren't supporting or going against Israel can expect retribution from the United States. So this is international racketeering by the Trump administration. But back to Israel. So this all Israel is doing is they're just setting up the failure of this ceasefire. This isn't a peace deal. It's not a peace. It's not even close to a peace deal. At best, it's a ceasefire. At best. And personally, just from a human being perspective, I hope it lasts as long as possible for the Palestinians. I hope they deserve to sleep at night. They deserve not to be bombed in their tents. They deserve to eat. They deserve to have water, to food, medical care. They deserve to have hospitals that aren't being bombed. Okay, and just the fact that Israel is allowed, between 500 and 600 trucks, lorries, or as they call it in Britain, or semi trucks, into the Gaza Strip with aid, is a tacit admission that they have been running a siege and a blockade now for 2 years. I mean, in total for going on 17 or 18 years, but in the last 2 years. So they have been starving the Palestinians. They have been withholding essential things for living, like food, water, and medical supplies, cutting off electricity and so forth, in addition to bombing them, flattening Gaza. So I'm happy for the Palestinians. They deserve as much respite as they can get. And I hope it lasts forever, quite frankly. However, I'm not going to celebrate because I'm skeptical, because Israel and Trump has adopted the Israeli tactic, which is to pretend to table a deal that is unworkable, where the other side really doesn't have any say in it, call it a deal when it's not a deal, it's an order. And if the other side doesn't comply, or if Israel breaks the ceasefire, which they have done every single time before, every single time, if they break it, then and something happens, or there's someone shoots back at an Israeli position, or a rocket, a glorified Roman candle lands in, on the Israeli side, then they say, oh, look, we gave them a chance for peace, and we don't have a partner to negotiate with. Yeah, because you killed them all. You assassinated all the Hamas negotiators. Or you put them in prison like Marwan Barghouti, any kind of unifying political figure. So they've rigged it at every single angle so that there can't be any sort of bilateral understanding. There can't be, any kind of workable long-term peace agreement. And then they blame the Palestinians. What Trump will do, see, Trump is not serious. He's not a serious enough person, and he's surrounded himself with TV presenters, grifters, and con artists in his cabinet, all of which, every single one of these con artists, grifters, and Fox News presenters, all of them were handpicked by the Israeli lobby. Anybody who touches national security or touches foreign policy was handpicked by Mary Madelson and Benjamin Netanyahu's office. Okay, every single one. So within that talent pool of no talent, they're talented in looking after themselves. These people, these are con artists, they're scamsters, they're professional liars, and they do not have the ability to construct a framework that has everybody's interests in mind. That's what a peace deal looks like. There'll be no peace deal from the Trump administration. And then if anything goes wrong or breaks down, he will then blame the party that he believes or perceives to be his, quote, enemy, i.e. it'll be the Palestinians, even if it's blatantly Israel's fault and the United States' fault. I mean, it's so disingenuous. Israel's stated policy is no Palestinian state. And Trump did not even mention, not in Sharm el-Sheikh, not at that gaudy display in the Israeli parliament. It's just a humiliation for the United States. What the performance, it was like Don Rickles and Dean Martin's celebrity roast. It was embarrassing. But Trump doesn't have any shame at that level. He's there, made a few quips with Mary Madelson that could be construed as somewhat borderline. But at the end of the day, he is dancing He is dancing to the tune of the piper that paid him. And that piper is the Israeli lobby. They own him. They don't, and basically his son-in-law is the one running point on most of this, as well as his real estate associates like Steve Witkoff. These are not diplomats. So he didn't acknowledge that there was a genocide in Gaza, and he didn't acknowledge a Palestinian statehood. Even if all of these countries, including NATO members, had formally recognized a Palestinian state probably for quite precarious reasons, mind you, Britain and France and so forth, there was a strategic. Nonetheless, it's on the table, and most UN members will have voted for that or recognize that in the General Assembly. Not a mention. That means there'll be no peace. There'll be no peace deal, not with Trump in office, and not with the current regime in Tel Aviv. So they will just resume the bombing after they get all of their hostages back or enough of them back. It doesn't matter. They're going to if they get all of them back, they will resume the bombing. If they disarm the Palestinians, they'll say they haven't disarmed them enough, and they'll keep attacking. And if they get some of the hostages back, or they're POWs at this point, because many of them are the ones left are reservists. So these are POWs. I mean, here's the other thing is how this is framed. Israel says this is war. Trump said Bibi has been a great wartime president. This is not a war. Just the fact that it's being referred to by our mainstream media as the war in Gaza, or it's being referred to by Trump as a war, or by the Israelis as a war. They want to frame it as a war and not what it actually is, because that means that they can exercise extrajudicial powers and act with extreme prejudice. That's why they frame it as a war on terror. That's how they're framing it. You can suspend all international norms, all international law, all of it, if it's a war on terror. So Israel labels a Palestinian armed resistance as terrorists, then they lobby Washington, London, and Paris, and Berlin, and Brussels to do the same. And then suddenly, it's a war on terror. We have a coalition of the willing, and Israel is the point person in this, noble crusade against terrorism, when in fact, under international law, Palestine, the Palestinians, as an occupied people, have a right under international law and multiple treaties and conventions to have an armed liberation struggle. And that's what's going on in Gaza. It's not an expeditionary terrorist organization, Hamas, not by any definition historically, but the bar has been lowered to such a degree on this elastic term that's completely loaded, and in Israel's case, front loaded, in order for it to achieve its territorial ambitions. So, I mean, it's so easy to pick this apart, but it's sad that there's so many people in the media and politics that have submitted to this grand fairy tale that somehow Israel's just defending itself. I mean, it's beyond audacious. I mean, we've never seen anything like this in history. Never. Not at least in the modern era, when we've had a global media able to disseminate these issues in real time. The level of lies, of deception, of the intellectual corruption that we're dealing with here is unprecedented. It's unprecedented. How are we going to deal with this? Really, with the current political leadership in these countries, it does not look like they're going to be capable of doing the right thing at the end of the day. And that's really what this is all about. If they talk a lot about Western democracy, Western civilization, well, Western civilization and democracy and post-Enlightenment, post-Westphalian nation states, the age of rationality is based on what is right and what is moral. These are common values, common definitions. These were codified after the Second World War in a number of treaties and international agreements and conventions. That's what it was for. And the U.S. led that process. And now the U.S. is tearing it apart. Interesting.